We're about to go through one of the creepiest, most messed up cases in all of US history. But first, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is right where you are. We love knowing what places and what times of day these stories reach. So here we go. It's the fall of 1867, and this tiny town called Millfield, tucked away in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, is still hurting from the Civil War. The town used to be doing great, but now it's falling apart, and a lot of the buildings still have marks from the fighting. One building that made it through mostly okay was the Caldwell store, a 3-story brick building sitting right on the corner of Elm Street and River Road. A woman named Josephine Caldwell took over running the place after her husband Harold died, and honestly, people had some quiet questions about how he died. The county papers say Harold Caldwell died of heart failure at age 43, back in the winter of 1865, right as the war was ending. But the guys down at the local bar told a different story, one about a marriage gone cold, ugly fights behind closed doors, and a wife who almost looked relieved once she put on her black widow's clothes. Josephine was 37, and everybody in Millfield knew her for being sharp mind, sharper mouth. Years later, people found her record books up in the store's attic, and they showed a woman who tracked every single penny like a hawk. People who did business with her said she was a striking woman, with piercing blue eyes and dark hair always pulled back tight in a bun, not one hair out of place. She wore her widow's black clothes so well that some folks said she looked like she was born to wear it. "I have no interest in getting married again," she supposedly told Mrs. Elena Whitman, the doctor's wife, over tea in the spring of 1867. "Love is a business owner's worst enemy. It messes with your head and drains your wallet." According to Mrs. Whitman's diary, found decades later while fixing up the old Whitman house, Josephine laughed right after saying that, a laugh that sounded as empty as a dry well. The store did really well under Josephine. While other businesses were struggling after the war, the Caldwell store kept growing, adding more stuff and more customers. People said Josephine gave credit to folks who really needed it, but she came down hard on anyone who owed her money and didn't pay up. The basement of the store, town records say, was just used to store stuff, mostly dry goods and canned food that needed to stay cool. Only 2 people were allowed down there, Josephine and her longtime worker, a man named Isaiah Turner. Isaiah Turner was kind of a mystery in Millfield. He showed up in town in early summer of 1866, a tall guy with broad shoulders, a noticeable limp, and hands rough from years of hard work. County job records show Josephine hired him within a week of him showing up. He was 32, not married, and didn't say much about his past except that he'd fought in the Union Army during the war. Just that one fact could have gotten him kicked out of a lot of places in Virginia back then, but Josephine didn't seem to care one bit. "I only care that he can count right and lift what I can't," she supposedly told the town gossip, who asked her why on earth she'd hire a former Union soldier. And here's the thing, Isaiah wasn't just a Union soldier, he was also a freed slave who had fought for the North, which made his job at the store even more unusual for post-war Virginia. What happened between Josephine and Isaiah over the next few months would later become a huge topic of gossip and eventually investigation. According to the diary of Thomas Abernathy, the town's mailman, people saw Isaiah going into the store before sunrise and leaving after sunset, almost every single day. He ate his meals there, and a few times people saw him carrying Josephine's laundry to and from the washerwoman on Green Street. By winter of 1867, rumors were spreading around town. Some people said they heard weird noises coming from the store late at night, furniture being dragged around, muffled talking, and once, according to a widow who lived across the street, a scream that could have been pain or something else, and honestly, nobody wanted to guess which. Around this same time, small things started going missing from people's homes in Millfield. Nothing valuable, just a silver letter opener from Judge Wilson's desk, a brass key from the miller's front hall, an old thimble from Mrs. Apprentice's sewing basket. The town police wrote it all down, but never solved it. It seemed too small to bother chasing down when there were bigger crimes to deal with. Then, on the night of December 20th, 1867, a huge snowstorm hit the Shenandoah Valley. Weather records kept at the University of Virginia say it was one of the worst winter storms the area had seen in decades. The temperature dropped way below freezing, and by morning, Millfield was buried under more than 2 feet of snow. That storm was the night Isaiah Turner vanished. According to statements given to Constable Frederick Jenkins, written up in his official report dated January 3, 1868, people saw Isaiah walk into the store at around 4:00 in the afternoon on December 20th, right as the snow was starting to really come down. That was the last time anyone besides Josephine Caldwell claimed to see him alive. When people asked Josephine where Isaiah went, she supposedly told worried townsfolk that he'd headed up north to visit family in Pennsylvania for Christmas. Most people believed her, though a few thought it was strange for anyone to travel during a blizzard like that. Weeks went by with no word from Isaiah, and people started talking. According to Reverend George Harmon's diary, dated February 10, 1868, folks at church were starting to worry about what kind of relationship Josephine and her worker really had. There are whispers of something improper going on, the Reverend wrote, though nobody dares say it out loud, afraid of what Mrs. Caldwell might do. The store kept running, with Josephine now handling everything on her own. People who did business with her during this time said she seemed unusually quiet, like her usual sharpness had worn down from tiredness. The record books from this period, kept now at the County Historical Society, show weird mistakes in her math and inventory, small errors, but they stood out a lot given how careful Josephine used to be. Then in late March of 1868, almost 3 months after Isaiah disappeared, something happened that would eventually reveal the truth about that December snowstorm. According to Dr. Walter Whitman's own account, he got called to the store on the evening of March 25th to check on Josephine, who had apparently passed out while counting the day's money. When he got there, he found her totally out of it and burning up with fever. While trying to treat her, she supposedly started talking nonsense, mentioning the basement, chains, and something she called our masterpiece. The doctor's notes, found after he died in 1872, show he first thought it was just fever talk, but he got worried enough to tell Constable Jenkins about it the next day. The constable, according to his official report dated March 27, 1868, decided to take a quick look around the store's basement while Josephine was stuck in bed under the doctor's care. What he found down there shocked the whole town of Millfield. The basement, reached by a narrow staircase behind a door that was usually locked, was split into a few rooms. The main area had exactly what you'd expect: barrels of flour and sugar, crates of canned goods, and other supplies. But a smaller room, hidden behind a fake wall of shelves, had something completely different inside. According to the constable's detailed report, this hidden room was about 10 feet by 12 feet and had a cot, a small table, and a chamber pot. Iron rings were bolted into the stone wall with heavy chains attached that looked like they'd been used recently. On the table sat a leather journal with writing inside from 2 different people. One handwriting was firm and neat, the other bigger and messier. This journal, parts of which showed up later in court papers that Judge Wilson eventually sealed, supposedly held a detailed account of what Josephine called our experiment in the limits of devotion. According to people who claimed to have seen the papers before they got sealed away, the journal described a relationship that started off as just boss and worker, but turned into something way more complicated and disturbing. Turns out Isaiah Turner never left for Pennsylvania at all. The journal entries suggested he had willingly agreed to be shut in that hidden basement room sometimes, for days at a time, as part of what was described as the two of them exploring the limits of control and giving in. What was most disturbing to the people who read this stuff was how the arrangement seemed to change over time. Later entries, supposedly written by Josephine, described Isaiah becoming more and more unwilling to keep doing these sessions, while Josephine grew more and more obsessed with holding on to what she called our special connection. The last entry in the journal, dated December 21, 1867, the day after the snowstorm started, had just one sentence in it: "He tried to leave me like they all do, but now he will stay forever." When they searched the rest of the store's basement, checking behind walls and under floorboards, they found no trace of Isaiah Turner anywhere. What might have started off as a strange but agreed-upon relationship between 2 adults had clearly turned into something much darker. But then investigators checked the big cast-iron stove that heated the main floor of the store, and in the ashes they found what looked like tiny bits of bone and metal pieces that the town blacksmith recognized as matching the chains found in that hidden room. Josephine Caldwell never went to trial for whatever happened to Isaiah Turner. On April 2, 1868, while still under house arrest in her home above the store, she died of what Dr. Whitman said was brain fever. In his medical report, kept in county records, the doctor wrote that in her last hours, Josephine kept murmuring, "He mocked my chains, but love forged stronger ones." Later that year, the Caldwell store got sold to a family from Richmond who had no idea about its history. The hidden basement room got sealed up with its entrance hidden behind new shelves. For years, workers and customers at what became known as the River Road General Store said they felt weird cold spots on parts of the main floor, especially near that big stove, which kept heating the building until it finally got replaced with more modern heating in the early 1900s. In 1924, while fixing up the building's foundation, workers found a small metal box stuck inside the basement wall. According to an article in the Millfield Gazette from June 12 that year, the box had several personal items inside: a silver letter opener, a brass key, an old thimble, and a gold wedding ring that records showed had belonged to Harold Caldwell. There was also an old-style photograph inside the box showing a stern-faced woman in widow's clothes standing behind a seated man whose face had been carefully scratched right out of the picture. The building that used to be the Caldwell store still stands today on the corner of Elm Street and River Road in Millfield, Virginia. Over the years, it's been a bunch of different things: a hardware store, a restaurant, and most recently a little shop selling locally made crafts. The current owner, Margaret Holland, says she doesn't know anything about the building's history, though in a 1968 interview with a grad student studying local buildings, she did admit that something about the basement makes me uneasy. I avoid going down there whenever possible. That same year, during an unusually cold December, a construction worker fixing the building's heating system said he found what looked like a partial handprint burned into the brick around the old chimney, like someone had pressed their palm against the hot surface and held it there no matter how much it hurt. According to what he told the local historical society, the whole Caldwell Turner case had mostly been forgotten by the 1970s, buried in dusty county courthouse files and only brought up now and then in whispered stories from Millfield's older folks. And hey, maybe that's for the best. Some secrets, like what really happened in that store basement during the 1867 snowstorm, might just need to stay buried in the past. Here's what we do know for sure. Josephine Caldwell, who once laughed off the whole idea of love, seems to have found a different kind of attachment, one so intense it ended up destroying both her and the man she became obsessed with. The chains found in that hidden room may have been real physical chains, but the real bond tying these two people together came from something way more complicated and dangerous. Even today, some people in Millfield say that on cold winter nights, when the wind blows down from the mountains and snow starts falling, you can hear the faint sound of chains rattling near the old store. Others say that on the night of the storm's anniversary, you can sometimes catch a glimpse of a limping man's figure through the windows, walking between the shelves like he's still doing his job after more than 100 years. Maybe these are just spooky details that got added onto a sad local story over time. Or maybe they hint at something true that the official records, with their cold, careful wording, just couldn't capture, that some bonds outlast even death, trapping the people involved in patterns that repeat again and again through the years. The journals that could have told us more about what was really going on in Josephine and Isaiah's minds were supposedly destroyed in a courthouse fire back in 1952, along with a bunch of other papers about the case. All that's left now are scattered pieces of the story, tucked away in different archives and personal papers like puzzle pieces that can never fully come together. What's maybe the most disturbing part of this whole case isn't what we know, it's what we don't. What was really going on between these two people, what pulled them together, and what eventually pushed them to such a tragic end, we can only guess. Like a lot of unsolved history mysteries, the story of the widow and her worker doesn't wrap up neatly. There's no satisfying ending that clears up the darkness at the center of it. In a letter found in 1961 during the teardown of the old Whitman house, Dr. Walter Whitman had written to his brother in Boston, "I've seen a lot of disturbing things in my years as a doctor, but nothing has kept me up at night like what was found in the basement of the Caldwell store. It's not even the physical cruelty that haunts me, it's the peek it gave into just how far a human heart can fall when obsession dresses itself up as love. I don't think I'll ever understand it, though maybe that's for the best. Millfield has changed a lot in the century and a half since all this happened. The scars of the Civil War have faded away. New buildings have gone up where old ones used to stand, and generations have come and gone. But the story of Josephine Caldwell and Isaiah Turner sticks around, passed down over the years as a warning about the dangers of being isolated, of obsession, and of the dark places the human mind can wander when it's left alone with itself. For people who study this kind of thing, the tragedy at the Caldwell store is a reminder that the scariest monsters aren't ghosts or creatures, they're ordinary people whose minds turned inward, twisting normal human feelings into something warped and dangerous. As for the ghosts some people say still haunt the corner of Elm Street and River Road, whether they're real or not almost doesn't matter. What matters is what they stand for. The lasting power of a story that speaks to our deepest fears about love, possession, and the thin line that can separate the two. In the end, maybe the creepiest part of this whole story is just how normal Josephine Caldwell and Isaiah Turner seemed to their neighbors. As far as anyone could tell, they were just a widow running her late husband's store and the worker who helped her out. The fact that something so dark could grow underneath something so ordinary reminds us that we can never really know what's going on inside the hearts and minds of the people around us, or even inside ourselves. The widow who once mocked the idea of love ended up finding a different kind of attachment, one built not on warmth and mutual respect, but on obsession and control. The chains found in that hidden room were maybe just the physical version of the invisible bonds that had come to define their relationship, bonds that turned out to be stronger and way more deadly than either of them ever expected. As winter comes once more to the Shenandoah Valley and snow starts falling on the old building that used to be the Caldwell store, you can't help but wonder, are they still there, locked in some endless struggle? And if they are, which one is really the prisoner and which one's the jailer? Some questions maybe are better left unanswered. Buried in the gaps of history between what's written down and what's been forgotten, stories like Josephine Caldwell and Isaiah Turner's keep coming back because they speak to something basic about being human, our capacity for both connection and cruelty, for love and its darker twin, obsession. The fact that all of us have that capacity inside us might be the most disturbing truth of all. The sound of chains, whether it's real or just in people's heads, reminds us of the bonds we form in life, some that lift us up and others that drag us down into darkness. For Josephine Caldwell, who once mocked the whole idea of love, that sound became both her victory and her downfall. And for anyone who still hears it on cold winter nights in Millfield, Virginia, it's a warning passed down through the years. Be careful what you chain to your heart because you might end up chained too. The sound of chains, real or imagined, reminds us of the bonds we form in life, some that lift us up and others that drag us down into darkness. For Josephine Caldwell, who once mocked the whole idea of love, that sound became both her victory and her downfall. And for anyone who still hears it on cold winter nights in Millfield, Virginia, it's a warning passed down through the years. Be careful what you chain to your heart because you might end up chained too. In 1963, a grad student from the University of Virginia named Elizabeth Montgomery came to Millfield to research 1800s business history in the Shenandoah Valley. According to notes found among her belongings after she died in 1968, she spent several days going through the town's records and talking to elderly residents. Her research eventually led her to the old Caldwell store, where she supposedly asked for permission to check out the basement. The owner at the time, a man named Howard Jenkins, wasn't sure about it at first, but eventually agreed to go down with her. According to a statement Jenkins gave to the Millfield Historical Society in 1965, they found a part of the basement wall where the bricks looked newer than the ones around them. Looking closer, Montgomery insisted she could see scratch marks on the older bricks, like someone had tried to claw their way out. Jenkins remembered her saying. Montgomery's notes show she became more and more obsessed with the Caldwell-Turner case. She spent hours in the county courthouse going through whatever documents were left and tracked down descendants of people who'd lived in Millfield back in the 1860s. The most disturbing part were her last journal entries, where she wrote about feeling like there was a presence in her rented room at the local boarding house. "I feel like I'm being watched," she wrote on April 18, 1963. "Last night, I dreamed about a woman in black standing at the foot of my bed." She didn't say anything, but I understood she was warning me to stop my research. When I woke up, my hands were clenched so tight that my nails had cut into my palms and drawn blood. 2 days later, Montgomery suddenly stopped her research and left Millfield. According to the boarding house owner, she left in such a hurry that she left behind several of her things, including a silver letter opener she'd bought at an antique shop in town, an item that, according to the shop's records, had once belonged to Judge Wilson, one of the officials who had investigated the original Caldwell case. Montgomery went back to the university but never finished her thesis. Her advisor, Professor James Harrington, wrote in a letter to her parents after she died that she'd become withdrawn and paranoid in the weeks after coming back from Millfield. She talked about being followed, hearing the sound of chains at night, and hearing a woman's voice whispering in her ear when she was alone. Elizabeth Montgomery was found dead in her apartment on December 20th, 1963, exactly 96 years to the day after Isaiah Turner disappeared. Her death was officially ruled a suicide, but the details were strange enough that the coroner's report specifically mentioned them. Her wrists had marks like they'd been tied tightly, even though no ropes or restraints were found in the apartment. Most disturbing of all, it looked like she had used a piece of chain to hang herself, a chain that, according to police, didn't match anything else in her apartment or belongings. In a sealed envelope among her things, they found one last journal entry, dated the day she died. It simply said, "She has found me. She says I remind her of him. I cannot escape her chains." Elizabeth Montgomery's death might have just been written off as the sad end of a troubled young woman if it weren't for what happened 5 years later. In 1968, during more renovations to the old Caldwell store building, workers breaking through that section of newer brick in the basement found a sealed-off chamber. Inside, according to the official police report, they found human remains. Forensic experts from the state medical examiner's office determined the bones belonged to an adult black man, somewhere between 30 and 40 years old. The remains showed signs of long-term malnutrition and healed fractures that matched injuries you'd get from fighting in a war. Most notably, the right hip joint was badly worn down, which would have caused the person to walk with a noticeable limp. Along with the remains, they also found several links of chain, a pocket watch with the initials IT on it, and most disturbing of all, a journal. The pages had mostly rotted away from moisture in the sealed room, but some parts were still readable. According to people who looked at it before it got sealed by court order, these passages described Isaiah Turner's final days. December 21st, 1867, the storm is raging outside. She's locked the door and taken the key. I told her today I couldn't keep doing this, that I'd accepted a job in Philadelphia and would be leaving after Christmas. She laughed that hollow laugh of hers and said, "No one leaves me, Isaiah, not my husband, and certainly not you." Another passage written some days later read, "I don't know how long I've been here. The food she brings is barely enough to keep me alive. When I ask why she's doing this, she just says I belong to her now, that I'm the only one who really understands her true nature. She sits for hours watching me, writing in her own journal. Sometimes she reads out loud what she's written, terrible things about love and possession. I fear for my life." The final entry, written in a shaky, barely readable hand, simply said, "She came today with the chains heated in the fire, said she would mark me as hers forever. God help me." The discovery of Isaiah Turner's remains and journal caused a brief stir in Millfield, but the story got hushed up fast. According to old newspaper archives, the town council quietly voted to bury the remains in the county cemetery with no markers showing who was buried there or how they died. The journal got sealed by court order and put in the county archives, where it supposedly stayed until the courthouse fire of 1952, but the story wouldn't stay buried. Over the following decades, different owners of the building kept reporting strange things, unexplained cold spots, the sound of chains rattling at night, items that moved on their own. Several attempts to renovate the basement got mysteriously abandoned, with workers refusing to go back after saying they felt watched by someone full of rage. In 1982, during another attempt to fix up the basement, workers found a small hollow space behind the chimney. Inside was a metal box with what looked like a woman's wedding ring, several buttons cut off a Union Army uniform, and an old-style photograph of a stern-faced woman standing next to a seated black man whose expression was serious but dignified. On the back, written in firm, neat handwriting, were the words JC and IT, bound forever. As of 1968, the building's owner had turned the main floor into a small museum about Millfield's history, with a special section on the Civil War era. But strangely, there was no mention anywhere of Josephine Caldwell or Isaiah Turner, even though the store had played such a big part in the town's business history. When a reporter from the Richmond Times-Dispatch asked about this in 1965, the owner, Martin Hollister, reportedly said, "Some stories are better left untold." According to the reporter's notes, Hollister then added, almost like an afterthought, "Besides, she doesn't like us talking about him." When asked to explain what he meant, Hollister claimed he'd been misunderstood. The museum shut down for good 6 months later, with Hollister saying it was for personal reasons. He and his family left Millfield shortly after, leaving the building empty for years. In 1967, exactly 100 years after Isaiah Turner disappeared, a fire broke out in the old store building. Despite the efforts of Millfield's volunteer fire department, the building was badly damaged. During the teardown that followed, workers found something strange in the basement ruins, a small room with newer brick walls that had somehow survived the fire completely intact. Inside, according to the foreman's report, they found a small table with a leather journal and an old-fashioned pen sitting on it. The journal was open to a blank page, and the pen looked like it had recently been used, even though the building had been empty for years. Most disturbing of all was what looked like fresh ink on the page, a single line written in firm, neat handwriting. "Love wears many faces, some of them wear chains." The journal disappeared from the work site that same night. The foreman, when asked about it, said he had no idea what happened to it. He quit his job the next day and left Millfield, reportedly telling his wife, "Some things are better left buried in the ashes." The empty lot where the Caldwell store used to stand stayed vacant for years, with different building plans mysteriously falling apart every time. Locals started saying that Josephine Caldwell's influence somehow lingered, stopping anyone from building anything new on the site of her old business, the scene of her dark obsession. In 1968, the town council finally approved turning the empty lot into a small park. During the groundbreaking ceremony, the mayor's little daughter reportedly asked, "Daddy, who's that lady in the black dress watching us?" When her dad turned to look, he saw nobody there, but several other people at the ceremony said they felt a sudden cold breeze despite it being a warm summer day. The park got finished, but locals noticed that not many people liked to hang around there, especially after sunset. Kids would run through it on their way to and from school, but they never stopped to play. Dogs being walked through the park would often growl or whine, pulling hard on their leashes to get away. In the middle of the park stands a small plaque put up in 1968 that simply reads, "In memory of those who lived, worked, and suffered here. May they find the peace in death that eluded them in life." No names, no specific events mentioned, but every year on December 20th, someone leaves a single black rose and a length of chain beside that marker. The story of Josephine Caldwell and Isaiah Turner is a reminder of the darkest sides of human nature, how love can twist into obsession, how wanting connection can turn into needing to possess someone, and how the chains we build in life can trap us even after death. For the people of Millfield who know the story, the corner of Elm Street and River Road is a place to hurry past, not linger. And on cold winter nights, when the wind blows down from the mountains and snow starts falling, some say they can still hear chains rattling in the dark, along with the echo of a woman's hollow laugh. The real horror of what happened between Josephine Caldwell and Isaiah Turner isn't about ghosts or gore, it's about the very human capacity for obsession and cruelty. It reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous chains aren't made of iron, but of twisted emotions, chains that trap both the person doing the controlling and the person being controlled, in a pattern neither one can escape. In the archives at the University of Virginia, there's a fragment believed to be from Isaiah Turner's journal, saved by a librarian who rescued it from the courthouse before the 1952 fire. The passage, dated about a month before he disappeared, reads, "Today Mrs. Caldwell said something that chilled me to the bone. We were talking about a customer who hadn't paid his debt, and she said, 'All debts must be paid, Isaiah, one way or another.' When I asked what she meant, she smiled that smile of hers and said, 'When someone tries to leave you with unpaid accounts, you simply have to find a way to keep them close until the balance is settled.' I'm afraid there's a darkness in her that grows deeper every day. Maybe the most unsettling part of this whole story is how ordinary it started, just two lonely people looking for connection in a world that didn't give them many options. The fact that their relationship turned into something so twisted shows just how thin the line is between love and obsession, between wanting closeness and needing to possess. In death, just like in life, Josephine Caldwell and Isaiah Turner stay bound together. Their story is a warning tale, whispered by parents to keep their kids away from the park on the corner of Elm Street and River Road. Their spirits, whether real or just imagined, are a reminder of passions that consumed people instead of comforting them. The widow who once mocked the idea of love ended up finding a twisted version of it, one she carried with her to the grave and maybe even beyond. And Isaiah Turner, who was only looking for a job and maybe some human connection in a rough post-war world, ended up trapped in chains, both real and symbolic, that not even death could free him from. In 1968, exactly 100 years after Josephine Caldwell died, a researcher from the Virginia Historical Society came to Millfield to look at whatever records of the case were left. According to her report filed in the Society's archives, she spent several hours sitting in the park that now sits on the old store's spot. As she was getting ready to leave, she noticed the temperature suddenly drop along with a strong feeling of being watched. In her journal that night she wrote, "I can't shake the feeling that I've disturbed something that was better left resting. While sitting on a bench in the park today, I clearly heard a woman's voice whisper, 'He is mine, they are all mine.' When I turned around, no one was there, but on the ground next to me was a small brass button, the kind once used on Union Army uniforms. The researcher left Millfield the next day, leaving her work unfinished. In a letter to her supervisor, all she wrote was, 'Some chains are better left unexamined.'" And so the story of Josephine Caldwell and Isaiah Turner fades once more into the shadows of history, remembered only in whispers and warnings, in locals avoiding a certain park after dark, and in the sound of chains that some people still swear they hear when the winter wind blows through Millfield, Virginia. For people who study the darker side of human nature, this case is a reminder that the scariest monsters aren't supernatural, they're ordinary people whose minds turned inward, twisting normal feelings into something unrecognizable and deadly. And maybe the most disturbing part of all is knowing that this same capacity exists in every one of us, the potential to build chains of obsession that trap not just the people we claim to love, but ourselves too. As winter comes once more to the Shenandoah Valley and snow begins to fall on the little park that used to be the Caldwell store, you can't help but wonder, are they still there, locked in their endless struggle? And if they are, has a century and a half of being trapped together brought them any closer to understanding the true nature of the chains that bind them? Some questions may be